Joining us now to talk about where the fighting stands in the Middle East is Professor in International Relations and the Chair of the Department of Political Science at UNC Chapel Hill, Dr. Naven Boppet. Dr. Boppet, you just heard what the president has been saying over the past few months. We've heard him threaten to hit bridges and power plants. Are we actually closer to a deal? And what would it take for us to win the war? Would it be something as much as a ground invasion?
Good morning. So, again, in looking at the statements, one thing to sort of think about is what is the end game? What is the end state that the president wants to reach? I think the initial objective of trying to engage in regime change of Iran has been scaled back. And now what it looks like is some effort to limit their nuclear capability and limit their missile capability, along with opening the Strait of Hormuz. I think the problem, though, is that the U.S. has been at this for some time and it has attacked several targets in Iran. Almost certainly, this has caused immense damage within Iran. But we don't seem closer because this doesn't seem to bother Iran's IRCG as much as we would hope. And I think the IRCG is intent on making sure that the Strait of Hormuz now falls under Iran's control as an effort to try to assert Iran's power in the region. And so that's something that's fundamentally incompatible with what the U.S. wants. So we just have to see who gives on that. And my sense is that probably at some point there has to be some settlement where Iran retains some control over it. It might resemble something similar to the Strait of Malacca, where there are voluntary fees, though right now the RCG has rejected that. So again, in looking at what's going to happen, I don't think we achieve regime change or anything like that what the United States initially wanted. But we'll see kind of what ends up playing out of this. It's still ongoing.
Naven, you're an expert in relationships here in the Middle East. I mean, this fighting and relationship mess has been going on for centuries. Do you see, I mean, President Trump wrote the book, Art of the Deal. He knows how to close the deal. I know this is frustrating for him. It's frustrating for Americans that feel like we don't really understand what the mission is of some of this war. How do you see this playing out? What seems to be realistic for us?
I think realistically, what we're looking at is ideally some ability of traffic, of sea traffic to move through the Strait of Hormuz, but it's not going to be open traffic like it was before the war. I think what the president hopes to achieve is some movement towards some sort of a nuclear agreement or some limitation on ballistic missiles. But one thing to sort of bear in mind is that the IRCG and Iran has been through this for several months. Their expectation is that the U.S. is not really interested in sustaining this for much longer. Their expectation is that the United States is not willing to use ground forces, or the U.S. would have done it already. And if the U.S. were to do that, the U.S. would need an enormous number of ground forces. Iran is a mountainous terrain. It is much bigger than Iraq, so it would require a big force. And I think what Iran is reading is that that's not something the Trump administration is terribly interested in. It's not something that the United States is not interested in higher oil prices for the foreseeable future. So they think they have a winning hand. And so I think that makes them more intransigent and more demanding and more willing to sort of probe the United States and see how much the United States is willing to target or willing to tolerate increased targeting of their forces in the region. So I think they sense that the United States has a bad hand, and I think they're trying to push on that.
Naven, we've had reports of China sending ground-to-air missiles to Iran, even though China has denied those claims. We know the Saudis are now getting involved, even though they've been reluctant to do so. What is your fear that this ends up being a broader conflict than what it originally started out as?
Yeah, so the more parties that get involved, the harder it's going to be to resolve the conflict, right? That's just something we can observe. So if we can take, for example, the first statement where if China supplies Iran with more weapons, that's only going to empower Iran to continue to push for more concessions to try to, in a sense, try to expand their hand and try to make sure that they seal in perhaps control of the Strait of Hormuz because they've now been empowered. And as we bring in more states, if we bring in Saudi, if we bring in Jordan, they have their own set of priorities for this war. So that might complicate any peace deal that the United States hopes to strike with Iran. So the more players we bring in, the more complicated it gets. So I will say most of the actors in the region, most of the U.S. allies, I think want to end this conflict. This is not something that's beneficial to them. If we just sort of think that the U.S. is able to intercept 90% of missiles incoming and 10% hit, 10% is still a lot. So I think that they probably are more eager to end this than perhaps on the other side.
Navin, before we run out of time, I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to go ahead and apologize. This is not a political question, but if you were to walk into the Oval Office to advise the president, I've been studying this region for a long time. I understand relationships here. Not that the president does it. Like, what would you advise him to do here?
I think there has to, in some ways, the United States has to be able to signal that it still has some capability in reserve, even though, again, as more missiles run out, then that starts to look more concerning. But I think the United States does have to strike some sort of deal here. The incentive would be to try to appear that the United States can hit Iran harder. The incentive might be to appear that the United States might be willing to call up forces for a ground invasion while simultaneously trying to track some form of a negotiated settlement. If the United States basically says we can no longer hit Iran, then you lose any sort of negotiating power. So the United States has to signal that it has something in reserve, but we have to recognize the reality that there probably is going to be some negotiated settlement here that's not going to involve any of the maximalist objectives that the Trump administration might have wanted to achieve early on.
Maybe there's a full house that we don't know about that we're waiting to play. I guess we'll have to see.
Yep, again,
Right.
Dr. Navin Bobbitt again from UNC Chapel Hill. Dr. Bobbitt, we appreciate you joining us on this matter.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.